Good morning and welcome to Bridge Church Online. I'm the Reverend Andy Buttress.
I'm Kieran.
I'm Sam.
And our normal presenters, Corrie and Jono, they're not with us, obviously. We're taking their place. They have deputised for Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby at this morning. So, hey, but you have us and welcome to you.
Yes, welcome. And this week is our second episode in our series on mental health and well-being. So we're really happy to have you with us. If this is a subject which you can relate to personally, or it's something you've never even thought about, this is definitely a topic you will enjoy and learn from. And today we're very blessed to have Matt Levitt be speaking, and you will enjoy him very much. But before that,
we know many of you have been taking some photos of your experiences in lockdown, and Rob Smith has kindly put some of those together for us. Thank you so much, Rob. I really enjoyed that, and it definitely gave us a good idea of how people's lives are going in lockdown. If you heard a loud bing before those clips, we do apologise. One of us forgot to turn off our notifications. I'll give you a clue who it was. It wasn't me or Kieran.
Thank you. Yeah, we're now going to go over to Catherine Ngira. Catherine was brought up in Zimbabwe, and I caught up with her in the week at Durham University, where she is studying for a degree. So here's an interview I had with Catherine, and one of the subjects that we talked about was Ubuntu, which was the theme of last week's talk. Catherine, it's lovely to see you again. You are in Durham at the moment.
Yes, I'm in
Yeah.
Durham.
Wow, it's good to see you. It's been a few months since we have. But you're not originally from Durham. Can you just tell us a little bit about your early life and where you've come from?
Thank you, and good to see you again as well. My name is Catherine Ngangira, and I am from Zimbabwe. I was born and raised in a town it's called Chinhoyi, which is in the northwest of the country. And I grew up in a neighborhood suburb that is called Cold Stream. And yeah, well, I think it's classified as a high density suburb. So it means I think the houses were a little bit closer to one another, but obviously not as maybe as it is in the ghetto-ish areas. So yeah, I think I attended all my education, primary school, high school, and university in Chinhoyi.
Right, okay. And your family, what was your family like? Large, small? What did your dad do and that sort of thing?
Well, so my family was probably maybe large, but in a certain extent it was not large. So I grew up staying with my mother because my dad passed away when I was just a little bit younger. So I grew up staying with my mother and my sister, who is 2 years older than me. But I think I don't remember a time when it was just the three of us in the house, because we always had a number of family members like cousins coming in to stay with us. And also the house that we were living in, also we had other families that were sharing the house with us. So it was kind of like it was a large number of people living in the same household, or maybe living in the same compound. So yeah, I think maybe we were large, but not very, very, very large, or either small, yeah, as well.
Mm. Mm. So last week, as part of the series, the teaching series we're doing on mental health and well-being, we talked about a phrase called Ubuntu, and just for those who were not listening last week, I'll just explain what that is. It's basically how we find our own self-worth, identity, and well-being, not just in ourselves, but in the communities in which we belong, friends, our families, our communities, even our church. And to be part of those kind of healthy communities are really important for our own development and well-being. Catherine, growing up where you did, would you say this philosophy of Ubuntu was evident in the communities that you were a part of?
Yes, it was very, very, very evident. I think to begin with, there is a proverb in African proverb. In my language, it's called, or maybe if I translate it in English, it's more of, it takes a whole village to raise a child,
Okay.
which means that my mother is not the only one who had the responsibility of raising us up, but it took the whole community that was around us to raise us up. So it meant every woman who was elderly, I look up to them. I could see a mother in them. And they had the authority when I was doing something wrong, even when I'm away from home, to come and say, what you were doing is not right. And I think it was even more evident when my mother passed away when I was a teenager. And just that sense of having different women in the community, different women from the church who just stood up and took up that motherly role. So I think it really became clear that it was not just my mother's responsibility to raise us up, but it was it was just the role for every woman in the community. And I think it also probably was not just limited to them giving advice or telling you what you should do, but I think it also spread out to people even providing small things like food, you know, or small things like clothes. Sometimes you just find someone who say, oh, I have these vegetables in my garden, please pass through the house and pick some things up. Oh, I have this tomato. So it's those small tiny things that even if you run out of cooking oil, for example, or you run out of salt in the house, you would not hesitate to go and approach the family next door and say, you know what, we've just run out of cooking oil for this evening. Can you please lend us some? So I think it is in those small aspects that growing up, it was evident that you'd never sleep hungry because you don't have something in the house, but there was always someone close by who was willing to just step up and share the burden with us.
That's really well explained. Thank you. That's a great illustration. So now you're in Durham. I know that you're doing a dissertation at this very minute on the subject of Ubuntu. Can you just explain a little bit now what you're doing and what you hope to do in the future?
Yes, so I'm just completing my dissertation on Ubuntu, and it's part of my training for ordination. So after this, I'm hoping to be ordained probably in September, and become a vicar like you.
Not like me.
Hopefully, maybe, you know, in some sense. Yes, so I think I'm just doing, I'm looking at Ubuntu and how does it shape my ministry as an ordained minister. So how can I use Ubuntu as maybe a framework for my ministry, or maybe for my ordained leadership as well. So after this, in a few months to come, I think I'll be somewhere down south where I'll be saving my curacy there.
Hey, well, we look forward to seeing you wherever down south you come. Thanks ever so much for sharing this afternoon, Catherine. It's good to speak to you again, and all the best with your dissertation. And I hope you'll get outstanding marks in your degree.
Thank you very much, Andy. Really appreciate that.
You deserve it. Okay, God bless. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Yes, it was really good to catch up with Catherine during the week and hear some of her life story. We do like it to keep it global in Bridge Church and life stories. And Sam has been learning during lockdown a musical instrument from the other side of the world. So here is our opportunity to hear Sam play the didgeridoo. Moving on.
Well, today Matt Levitt will be speaking to us. Thank you for joining us, Matt. Today Matt's talk will be in context of our mental health and well-being series, and he will be speaking on being honest and real. It's okay not to be okay. So please open your hearts and listen to what God is saying to you this morning. So let's grab a cuppa, sit back and enjoy the talk. Thank you, Matt.
Well, hi there, church. Good morning. It's great to see you again. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Matt, and I live and work here in Suffolk. If you're a regular part of Bridge Church, or if you've just found your way here through the internet somehow, you are more than willing, and more than welcome, I should say, to spend this time with us. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever played the children's game hide and seek? I guess, of course, we all have. It's probably the first game we ever play, isn't it? When, as little tiny babies with our parents, we cover our eyes and we go boo. And then it moves on into hiding somewhere around our house. Maybe you've even played it recently as grandparents trying to look after grandchildren. You know, I have a theory. I have a theory that hide and seek is probably God's favourite game. Maybe the truth is that God plays hide and seek with us every day of our lives. Most of the time, he's the seeker hunting us out. And we spend a lot of our lives hiding from him, sometimes deliberately, sometimes willfully, because we've done stuff perhaps we're ashamed of. Maybe we look back with regret and we hide our face from him. Maybe we're ashamed of who we've become. But, you know, it's all right, because every time he laughs and he smiles and he keeps seeking us out. But I also think occasionally, just occasionally, God is the hider. Not because he's absent, not because he's disappeared, but because he wants us to seek him out. Because it's in the seeking that sometimes we learn stuff. I mean, doesn't God hide in sickness? Doesn't God hide in the unanswered questions of faith? Doesn't he hide in the stories of our lives? And it's in that us seeking him out that we learn to grow, because we learn in the shadow times as well as in the light times. And I say all of that as a bit of an intro, really, because as a church, as Bridge Church, we're starting a series around mental health. Andrew started it last week, and it's a really important subject, especially in these unusual times. But it's a series that's deeper than purely about mental health, as defined by medical professionals, maybe. I think it's a series about identity. It's a series about honesty and about openness and about vulnerability. It's a series about patience and faith and grace, about us holding our arms and our hands wide open and our heads up, with a kind of embracing of a messiness of life and a messiness of our faith lives. That's the stance that I think Jesus advocates, but it's a stance that perhaps traditional church has shied away from. As I read through the Bible, I can see that the Bible is far more honest than most churches are about the actual levels of pain that go on in our lives, the confusion that works through our everyday life. And most churches seem to kind of be a little bit complicit in the silence of when it comes to the brokenness, of when it comes to holding our hands up and saying, I'm not okay. Leaders, perhaps especially, often feel ashamed or afraid to speak out about their inability or their brokenness or their fears or their disappointments or their shortcomings. But when I read through the Bible, I read story after story of people who were far from having it sorted out. I mean, just start right at the beginning. Start right at the beginning of the Bible, in the story of Adam and Eve. I mean, what sort of arrogance and selfishness does it take to say to God, I know better than you? But of course, I see that modelled in my life every day. And that led to regret, and it led to heartache and division and brokenness and pain, all those emotions that you and I feel. Moving on, the next sort of story. What about Noah? This great man of faith building a boat, a huge ark in the desert, proclaiming that rain is coming and the whole world is laughing at him. I mean, what amazing faith. What a super leader. What depth of spirituality he must have. And we hear sermons all the time, don't we, about his courage, about his relentless desire to serve God. But what about the end of the story? The story we don't hear sermons about very often. You know, when he came off the ark, he got rip-roaring drunk and rolled around naked in front of his children. I mean, what an ending to the story. Where he was broken, where he was ashamed, where he was afraid, where he was full of regret. Want to hear some more? What about Moses, David, Abraham, Lot, Sarah, Solomon, Rahab, Elijah, Saul? All of them God-fearing, God-loving, courageous, brilliant, loyal, passionate, committed people. But they were also angry, murderers, adulterers, liars, grudge holders, and perhaps even, and I use this word cautiously, perhaps manic depressive, some of them. And the New Testament characters aren't any better. And if you trace church history, the early church fathers weren't any better either. The truth is, as you sit there listening to this, the truth is none of us are who we appear to be. We've all got secrets. We've all got issues. We all struggle from time to time, even those that look like they've got it all sorted. No one is perfect. Not one. I've just paraphrased Romans 3 verse 10 there. None of us are perfect. Perhaps that is the biblical state of the African word Ubuntu that Andrew spoke about last week, the universal bond of sharing that connects humanity. The fact that we've all messed up, even those that look like they've got it all together. And going beyond the Ubuntu philosophy, it's not that we can fix it by being humans. No, that we all need God in this. That kind of messy spirituality that I would advocate is that refusal to pretend, refusal to lie and to allow others to believe that we're something that we're not. But the truth is most people find it easier to deal with difficult issues rather than handle the lack of pretending. And you know what? When we stop pretending, when you and I stop pretending, the bubble of the perfect Christian life is burst. And then others feel free to perhaps stop pretending. And actually, I believe that revealing honesty about who we are is the start of a deeper relationship with God. First, that recognition of who we are to ourselves, and then with a vulnerability to others. I don't think we can really be true to ourselves unless we connect with others, but connect with them about who we really are. That first most pressing challenge is to learn to be honest with ourselves about who we are. It's really easy, I think, for human beings to succumb to self-deception. But the Bible says that God delights when truth reigns in our inmost being, in the book of Psalms, chapter 51. He delights when truth reigns in our inner being. But who are we, really, in the cold light of day? Are we really truthful in our inmost being? Do we even know who we are in our inmost being? Sometimes I think our sense of self is so distorted. We're so used to being something that we're not. We don't even really know the truth about ourselves. It's funny, I don't know whether you've done this, but sometimes I read social media accounts or profiles of people that I know, and they sound like two different people. The people I read about online and the people I meet in the flesh, they seem different. Or maybe you've read accounts of events that you were at. And again, you think, it wasn't like that when I was there. They're wildly different occasions. That's what it reads like anyway. Or maybe you see mocked up, distorted, posed photos. And you realise that the truth is nothing like the photograph. Honesty about ourselves, about who we are, about what we look like, about our skills and our talents, about our likes and our dislikes, about our opinions, about our mental health. They help us know who we really are, but they also help in building trusting relationships with others. You see, I know when people are honest with me about who they are, their strengths and their weaknesses, I know that kind of deepens our connection. And that's true across every aspect of our lives. Our relationships with husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and families and friends. It's true as we present on social media, but it's also true as we step into the office or as we socialize in restaurants or sports clubs or even at church. The truth is, the more open and honest I am with those around me, the more likely they are to be open and honest with me. But of course, ultimately, as Christians, the real reason we need to live in honesty is that God himself is honest. His character is one without deceit. God cannot be anything other than 100% himself. He can't deceive. He can't lie. He can't masquerade. He can't pretend something that isn't true. Our most powerful relationships are built on trust, and that's no different when we consider the one we have with God. Often our reluctance to even be honest with God could point to a lack of trust in him. We fail to trust that he is going to be just, or that he's going to be forgiving, or that he will keep his promises, when in fact he is all of those things. And the truth is that because God is truthful, when he clearly states he will love us as we are, masks and all, we can rely on that. Once we know who we are, once we know we are accepted by God, then we can begin to be that unadulterated person with the people around us. But of course, that's much easier said than done. I know that vulnerability is scary. What if they don't like the person that I really am? What if they leave? What if they talk about me behind my back? What if I don't even like the person I am? And that, my friends, is the risk that we take. But we need to do it in order to be truly ourselves. And that's the kind of church that the Bridge is aiming to become. One that really is open and honest and vulnerable with each other. I don't know if you've done any travelling. I don't mean living it up in a 5-star hotel or something, or getting a cold drink delivered to us by a waiter at the poolside. No, I mean, have you ever done the sort of travelling where it's a little backpack on and you've got limited funds and you're in close quarters with those around you? I have, and I discovered it becomes really difficult to fake it when you're on the road. A few years ago, I did a driving road trip from Guatemala down to Costa Rica in Latin America, and I was with 3 of my closest friends. For added excitement, this is the kind of thing guys do, for added excitement, in order to get there as soon as possible, we made a rule that we weren't allowed out of the car at all on the drive down. Not at all. No toilet stops. If you're that desperate, there's a bottle. And you know, the truth is we managed it. Apart from when the border guards ordered us out at gunpoint. But the rest of the time, we were 100% cocooned inside that car. And we were driving hard. And it starts off looking fun. It starts off looking great. You know, kind of got our swagger on. You know, oh, this is easy. This is fine. But 3 days, 2 nights in, having slept in the back of the van, eating Mars bars and Red Bull, you know, I was ready to kill. The next person that decided it was funny to play The Venga Bus Is Coming, you know, all pretense goes down, doesn't it? The real me was on show. And those of you that know me know that the real me can perhaps be annoying. You know, I get angry when I get hungry. I get annoying to the people around me. I can lose patience quickly. I'm a frustrating know-it-all. I don't do well when I'm tired, and the people around me know it. And the truth is that those are the weaknesses I'm prepared to share on camera. I mean, what about the masks I wear that are a bit too close for comfort? What about the fear that I'm not good enough? What about the fear that I'm unlovable as I am? What about the regrets of life choices taken? A lot of the travel we did was fairly monotonous. It was long, straight roads, and it was either kind of dry desert sort of regions or rainforest jungle. But to be honest, they often felt the same. They were oppressive, and they were just an obstacle for us to get through. You know, by the end of the 2nd or 3rd day, you know, we just wanted to get out of there. But finally, we made it to Costa Rica, and we had a couple of days fun together. And then we turned round for the journey back. But this time it was different. This time we were taking it intentionally slow. We stopped whenever we fancied it. If there was an interesting turn-off, we just took it to see what would happen. We met people. We ate good local food. We kind of reveled in the desert regions. We stopped and we looked and we observed and we talked. And we soaked up the rainforest, looking at the fauna and flora. Now, of course, the route home took a lot longer. It took about 2 weeks. But which was better? Which did we enjoy more? Which was better for my soul? Well, of course, it was the long, slow, ponderous drive back. We talked, we shared, we opened up, we laughed, we told stories, we cried, We gave out and we took in. We saw projects actually that we learned to love and we gave generously. And in return, we experienced so much. What felt oppressive and frustrating on the route down became soul food on the way back. And I became closer with those guys than I ever had before. And those slower kind of days caused me to reflect on what we'd done. On the way down, we raced through the difficult terrain, just wanting to get rid of it. But on the way back, we deliberately embraced it, and what a difference it made. You know, somehow, deserts and wilderness regions seem really important to God. I don't know if you've noticed how much you've got to plan centres around the deserts. You know, Noah before the flood, it was desert all around. The Israelites escaped from Egypt with Moses into the desert. John the Baptist eating locusts and wild honey in the desert. Jesus tempted in the wilderness desert regions. And as you read those stories in the Bible, so many of God's people seemed prepared in the desert. They were prepared for something. And it was always about their identity and their purpose. Those desert times were about challenging them to see themselves as they really were, with masks off and the pretense gone. It was about honesty. It was about openness. It was about vulnerability and patience and faith. And I believe that if we want to grow as Christians and as people, we have to learn not just to endure those tough times, to rush through them as quickly as possible. No, we need to revel in them. Now, of course, I'm not saying we become sort of masochistic, embracing pain, but to see the bigger picture beyond it. There's this amazing verse in the book of Hosea. Just before we get to it, a little bit of background. Hosea is this story, a historical story that's used to teach us a really important spiritual truth about God. That he's gracious, he's enduring, he's persistent, and he's relentless in his loving pursuit of us. Hosea was a man who spoke to the northern kingdom of Israel before they were carried off into captivity by the Assyrians in kind of 722 BC, something like that. And Hosea spoke in 744. And once Israel had split, Israel in the north, Judah in the south, Israel became involved in idol worship. And Hosea was called by God to challenge Israel to turn back to him. And he was challenged to do this in a really unusual way, kind of a crazy way. God asked Hosea to marry a woman who would later become a prostitute. And even more, to raise her children, some of whom would be fathered by somebody other than him. And his call was to stay faithful through the faithfulness, or the unfaithfulness, I should say. And then to buy her back from this sexual slavery. It's kind of a crazy allegory, really. This picture of something that actually happened, but was a picture of Israel's relationship with God. But there are a couple of verses in chapter 2. Hosea chapter 2, verses 14 and 15 say this. Therefore, I am going to allure her. I will lead her into the desert, and I will speak tenderly to her. I will give her back her vineyards, and I will make the valley of Eker a door of hope, and then she will respond as she did in the days of her youth. You see, Israel as a nation couldn't hear God because of the busyness and the noise and the ongoing life disruption. But they also couldn't hear God because of the mask that they'd put in front of their face, pretending that they were something that they weren't. Maybe we're like that too. You see, God had always spoken tenderly to Israel, but they just couldn't hear him because of everything else that was going on, because of the pretense that had been built up. And she needed to strip that away. So what did God do? God said he was going to allure her. I mean, what an unusual word that is. But it's a deliberate word. Alluring. It means God beckoned, God seduced, God charmed Israel. Where? Well, he seduced her into the desert so that he could speak tenderly to her. Her time in the desert regions made her strong. It didn't make her perfect, but it made her much more aware of who she was as a nation. And I think God does that for us too. There are times where he wants to allure us into the desert regions. Maybe even these unusual COVID-19 times where he can cause us to strip our masks back and reveal ourselves for who we actually are. And even more than that, It said that he was going to take the parts that Israel were ashamed of, the parts that perhaps we don't let others see, our vulnerabilities, our weaknesses, our valleys of Ika, and turn them into hope. As I've alluded to, deserts don't have to be sand, you know. I mean, it could be our financial worries, it could be a relationship breakdown, it could be a coronavirus, it could be an anxiety, it could be our mental health, it could be our physical health. It could be any number of things. You know, the Valley of Ika was the scene of some of Israel's worst defeats and deepest sin. But God transformed it into a doorway of hope. And I believe God wants to allure us into the desert regions of our lives, to break down the walls that we build up, to remove the masks, so that we can step out in honesty and openness with ourselves, with God, and with each other. So as I end, can I encourage you to take up that challenge of being more honest about who we are, to lift up our heads and to smile as we recognise we're loved completely by a God who knows us completely. And then to risk it all with a bit of vulnerability as we share with those around us that we're not quite as perfect as we may have led them to believe. You might be surprised at the benefits it brings to your own identity, to your own mental health. And you might also be surprised at the way it causes others to open up too. And can I encourage you to do something else? Set down the coffee cup and the remote control. Stand up loudly and proclaim to the rest of the house that you're going to start a game of hide and seek. Cover your eyes and start counting. 1, 2, 3, coming, ready or not. And then laugh as you explore together at what God might teach you in these desert times. Amen.
Cheers, Matt. That was excellent. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. As we kind of move towards the end of this morning, I just want to mention Alpha, the Alpha course, which is a great opportunity to explore the Christian faith. It doesn't matter whether you have a faith or you have no faith. The Alpha course is for everybody who just simply wants to explore the idea of faith a little bit further. So we're going to have a mini Alpha just on the 4 Mondays in June, the 4 Monday evenings in June, and you are invited. You'll find a trailer to Alpha and opportunity to sign up on both the website and the Facebook page.
So we've nearly come to the end of our first part of the service. If you'd like to be part of the second section of the service, which is more reflection and prayer and worship, then just click on the link which is on our Facebook page. That will take you through to Zoom.
And not to forget, tomorrow is Bridge Pub. So we'll be meeting tomorrow at 7:45 p.m. Bring your own drinks, bring your own snacks. We'll be having games and quizzes together. And to join that, just click on our Facebook page. You click join. You click press the sign up button, and don't forget to like and follow our page for all of our good meeting and fun that we have.
You've got it.
Yes.
You've got it.
God bless.
Okay, so God bless you. Yeah, and thanks for joining us this morning. We hope to see you very, very soon.
Take care.
Take care.